And we are live. Hello, everyone. My name is Sanket, and I welcome you all into today's session where we are going to go ahead and talk about object-oriented programming with Python. In today's webinar, we will provide you with an introduction to software development using object-oriented programming with Python, and it will cover the fundamentals of software development, object-oriented programming concepts, and how to apply them in Python. And in order to do so, I have with me today Gerson Ariche, one of our Python instructors. And without further ado, I would like to go ahead and pass on the mic to him so that he can go ahead and get this session kickstarted. Gerson, the mic is all yours.
Hello, everybody. How are you guys doing today? So for today's lesson, I will be going over OOP using Python, all right? Okay, so give me 1 second. All right, so what is the agenda for today? All right, so I will cover what is object-oriented programming, the main concept of OOP, how would you create classes and objects, and like what are the difference, understanding inheritance and polymorphism, and how would you implement it using Python, and as well as encapsulation. All right, and then we're gonna also be doing the hands-on as well as building a project out of the material that we learned today. All right. Okay. All right. So introduction. So object-oriented programming, or OOP, is a way of structuring your programming data, properties, and behavior into individual objects, all right? And it's like a programming paradigm, all right? So let's say we want to build like a certain project that contains certain characteristics. Let's say you're building a banking system, all right? All right, so and you want to use that and you want to use some specific code set multiple times, all right? So if you try to do it individually, it can get repetitive, all right? So where object-oriented programming come in is where you put all those code into a single unit, all right? So let's take like an example of a car. Let's try to build an object of a car, all right? So it will contain properties and values and methods, all right? So property are basically like a quick description of whatever description you try to describe of a class. All right, so a car will have, let's say, a size, a make model, the year that it was made, or like the color of it. All right, and then if you try and describe multiple card, you will have to write that manually. All right, but with object-oriented programming, you will just have to just pass in a value to those properties. All right, okay. So what is OOP in Python? All right. So like I discussed earlier, is a paradigm that use object and classes to build programs. It take a collection of properties, values, and method that is used to describe real-world objects. Its main object is to combine all the functionality that work together as a single unit. All right. And those real-world objects can be anything. So an example of a real-world object that you can use for OOP in Python would be a car, or let's say an animal, or a banking system, or let's say you're like a game developer, right? So if you guys like want to learn like game development, OOP is like used a lot in OOP just because you will use like a lot of characteristics multiple times, such as like the main character or enemies. All right. So let's take, for example, like a video game character. All right. So we have like multiple enemies. All right. So each enemy maybe have like a health bar, and it also have like a name and damage and maybe like defense and some special power. All right. So and you have 20 enemies. All right. So if you want to add all those properties that are listed, such as health, damage, HP, you have to write it manually multiple times if you try to do it manually, right? But with OOP, you will just have to just describe the class, what properties you want to add, and then when you call in the object, you just pass in the value, all right? So you don't have to rewrite your code multiple times, right? Going over all the concepts for this webinar, right? So the main concept we're going to be going over is a class, objects, inheritance, polymorphism, and encapsulation. All right. So these are like the 5 main concepts that you need to know when you're working with OOP. All right. So what is a class? All right. So you can think of the class a blueprint of whatever concept that you want to describe, right? So let's take, for example, a car, right? So how do we create a blueprint of a car, right? So what does a car contain? So a car contain, let's say, so the main characteristic if we want to describe a car will be the make, all right? So who made that car? Could it be Toyota, Honda, Ford, Bugatti, all right? So you can add make for the property as well as what type of model. So every car, every make has different type of model, all right? You can also describe a car by the year. When was it made? Was it made in 2010, 2023, 1990? All right. So you can also describe a car by the year, the color of it, and maybe like how many miles has it been used already. All right. So that's what the class is basically describing the object. All right. It gives you the blueprint of that object. All right. Um, Objects is basically is an instant of the class, all right? So basically you grab all the property and then you assign that to an object, all right? So an example, all right? So you got 5 different car and all those 5 cars will contain all the class property, but it will contain different value, all right? So one will be a Toyota that has all the class. Another object will be, let's say, a Mustang or maybe a Ford. All right, so it will contain all the class and you use it to describe it, all right? All right, so next topic will be inheritance, all right? And what inheritor does is basically it will grab one class and try make it its own, all right? So it will contain all the properties and method of another class. All right, so let's pretend that we create a class called animal and it contains some properties, all right? So it got a name, it got a weight, the type of animal, all right? So we have an animal class, all right? And then we create a second class called, let's say maybe birds, all right? It will contain all the class of the animal plus its own property, all right? So what inheritor does is basically is a class that take all the properties and values and methods from another class, all right? Polymorphism is basically is basically mean many forms, all right? So you have let's say you have a class and you have like a couple function that has the same name. So you create a couple class that inherit off of the main class. All right. So when you inherit the same the when you inherit the class from the main class and it has the same method, that's basically what polymorphism is. All right. So basically, it has many form, but it's pretty much has the same name. Right. So let's say we create a function for the main class called let's say walk. All right. So the main class has walk, and then the inheritance from that second class will have also a function called walk, but it says something different, all right? It can still be run, but it will be running with a different value, all right? So that was polymorphism means. And then last is called, and the last main cause of OOP is encapsulation, all right? And what does that mean is basically securing your data, all right? So what data will be public, what data will be private, and what data will be protected, all right? So there may be some property that you don't want the user to have access and you want to keep it private. And they can only able to change that value to using a method, all right? And that what encapsulation does, all right? It basically makes certain data inaccessible only in a different type of mean, all right? Okay. All right, so let's go with the first concept. What is a class, all right? So a class contains the blueprint of an object. It is an entity that manages all of its attributes and methods, all right? For example, we have a class called dogs, and it will keep track all the attribute of a dog, all right? So a dog will probably, so if you want to create a blueprint of a dog, you will list out its properties, all right? So an example, let's say, how much the dog weight, all right? So different dogs have different type of weight. Maybe the dog is active, the dog personality, the dog height, or even the dog breed, all right? So basically a class is just a blueprint that you want to describe something, all right? And then I'm going to create a whiteboard to make it easier for visualization, all right? So give me a second, all right? Are you guys able to see my whiteboard? Okay, let's see. Okay, move on. All right, so let's take, for example, all right, I'm going to create a class called car, all right? So we have a class called car, and we want to create a blueprint, all right? So a class called car will contain properties, all right? So that property can be, let's say, it can be any type of property you want to list, all right? So I'm going to give it some random properties, all right? So car will have a make, all right? So who made that car? Model, so that's another property, all right? Maybe and the year, okay? So this right here is basically the class, and all this right here is basically the property, all right? So once we create a blueprint of the class, we want to pass in value, all right? So we create 3 different objects, all right? So we're going to create like one object and give an example, all right? We want to give it a value, all right? So make, and we're going to equal to, let's say, Toyota, all right? Toyota, and then the model, maybe Corolla, and then the year. Maybe we bought like a 2020 Toyota Corolla, all right? All right, so this is basically, we had basically created a class, all right? And then if you want to call an object, all right? So I'm gonna call car1, all right? Car1 is equal to, let's say, car, all right? Basically, car1 would contain all the properties and values, right? All right, and if you create another value, you create another object called car2, all right? And we assign it to the object car. It contains all the properties and value of the car class, all right? Let's erase it, all right? But instead of hard coding, I always want to pass in values, all right? Okay, so let's see. I'll draw it here. And I'm going to just put, let's say, Toyota. Erase this part. Toyota. Corolla. Let me erase this again. Corolla. I put like 2020. All right. So we got one object. And then we're gonna add a different value instead. Instead of having Toyota, we can create a Ford. All right. Ford. Model will be Mustang. All right. And then this one we can say maybe 2012. All right. All right. So car1 will contain all the properties. So it will contain make, model, and year. And then we just describe it with the value. All right. So this right here, everything right here. All right. These are called values. All right. So we just pass in values. All right. So that's like the basic of a class. All right. So a class will basically is a blueprint of whatever real life object that you want to describe. All right. So I just described a car. It contained make, it contained model, it contained year. Car1 contained all these properties. And then the value that passed will contain only specifically to the object that I created. All right. So car1, I have Toyota Corolla 2020. And car1, we the only one will have that value. All right. Car2 has Ford, Mustang, and 2012. All right. And car2 will only have those values. All right. And let's say I create another one, car3. Car3. All right. And this one I'll put, let's say, car. Right. I put like Nissan as a make, like model, maybe Altima, and I put like 2018. All right. All right. So it has all the properties, make, model, year, and then the value will be Nissan Altima 2008. All right. And that's like that's the power of OOP, all right? So if you try to do this without OOP, you will manually have to type in all the values, right? But with OOP, instead of adding the make, model, year multiple times, you just call in the class and pass in the value, all right? Okay, so stop sharing. Oops. All right. All right, so this is how you create a class in Python, all right? So in order to create a class in Python, you will use the keyword called class, all right? So the class is basically mean that you're creating the blueprint, all right? And then you will need to give it a class name, all right? So the class name can be whatever your name. So for example of the car example that I drew, I will just type in class, car, and colon, all right? And then whatever value, I will just add it inside the statement, all right? So if I want to create, let's say, empty class called dog, right? I will just type in class dog, all right? And that's how you create a class, all right? Okay. All right. So now you contain all the properties, methods, and value generated from a class. It described and derived from the real world objects such as a person, place, or a thing. All right. So I use the example of a car, and when I pass in the object to car 1, it basically is the object now. All right. So car 1 was the object, car 2 was the object, and it contained all the properties and values. All right. So an example of an object, it can be basically a car, it can be a student, it can be animal, it can be a banking system, it can be maybe a food, it can be whatever object that you want to describe, it can be anything. All right. All right. And an object consists of the following. All right. It contains properties and methods. All right. So basically properties is basically what I just described. All right. So those are like attributes, and those are what describe the object. All right. So property contain attribute that describe the objects. So the attribute can be, let's say, if we're describing a student, all right, a student will probably have a name, first name, last name, maybe a social security number, maybe a student ID, phone number or an address, maybe a major. So all the attributes I described are basically properties, all right? Example for the car. So I'll use the same example for car. Properties would be, let's say, the make, model, or year, all right? With animal, we can do how do we describe an animal, all right? So we can describe the animal by the animal type. Is it a mammal? Is it a reptile? Is it a bird? So what type of animal is it? All right. How much does the animal weigh? All right. How big is the animal? All right. Is the animal omnivore or a carnivore? Does it eat meat? Does it eat plant? All right. How about is it aggressive or friendly? All right. So all the stuff that I mentioned are basically properties. All right. All right. Give me 1 second. All right. Then what about a bank system? All right. All right. So if we want to describe a bank system, we can describe like some of this property. All right. For example, all right. So if someone open a bank, maybe that person have maybe like some form of value, all right? Some form of an account. All right. Let's think of an account. All right. Checking account. So a checking account could be that property or a savings, or maybe it has like a loan. All right. So those are all properties. All right. So property are basically used to describe an object, right? And then methods. So methods are basically function inside of a class, and what that does, it contain a behavior of that object, all right? So let's go with the example, let's say of a student, all right? So if we want to add a action to a student, that action could be basically, let's say the student take a class, all right? or maybe maybe study for a test. All right, so those are method. All right, or maybe an example for a car. All right, what type of behavior a car can do. All right, so a car can like turn on. It can pretty much drive. It can drive super fast. It can do a U-turn. It can turn. It can park. So basically, those are, but what I'm calling is basically methods. All right, I'm giving it actions to the car. Right. How about like an animal? All right, what type of behavior I can give to that object? All right. So maybe I have a bird animal. All right, a bird animal can, let's say, fly. It can like hunt. Maybe it can take care of their kids. Feed their kids some food. All right. Or maybe we can describe like a lizard, right? A lizard can like climb a tree. It can hunt some food. It can camouflage. All right, so all those stuff I'm describing are object, all right? And maybe like in a bank system. So an action for a bank system will be, let's say, depositing money, withdrawing money, opening up a new account. So anything that deal with like adding action and behavior, those are method, all right? So for a quick summary, so an object is basically describing a real world event. A property has like all the attribute that describe the property. I mean, that describe the object. And methods are basically describing the behavior of the object, all right? And then in order to create a object in Python, so you would use, let me see, all right? You would have to call in the name of the class, right? So it would look something like this, right? So if we create a student class and it contain, let's say we create an empty student class, all right? So we create a student class, a class right here, class student, all right? And it has no value, all right? We're gonna pretend it has no value, all right? All right, so the student will contain all like property and value, and we're gonna assign it to student one, all right? Now student one is the object, all right? And it contains everything inside the student class, all right? So let's go. I'm gonna write out an example in Python. All right. So I'm gonna get started with Python to show you an example. All right. So let's see. Where's Replit? 1 second. All right. Okay. So I'm using Replit for my IDE, and this is basically a cloud IDE that let me run any type of programming language. All right. So I want to create a class and an object. Right. So in order to create a class, I will just type in the keyword class, right? Followed by a name, all right? So I'm gonna take, let me see, let's say I'm gonna take student as an example, right? Student, right? I'll type in student, followed by a parenthesis, colon, all right? And I'm just gonna create an empty class. This is gonna be an empty class, so it's not gonna contain nothing, all right? Just to keep it very simple, all right? Empty class, all right? It has no property, no value, no attribute. All right. So this is just a very basic. It's just a class. So you could be so in order to create a class, you need to have the keyword class right here. So that one is there by default. I know some students get this confused. They think you have to like make a word up. No. So in order to create a class, you need to have the keyword class. And then for the name of the class, it can be whatever name, as long as like not a reserved word in Python. All right. So student is not a reserved word, so I can use it. All right. And what pass being that, or basically we're not doing anything with it, all right? Okay. And now how would I create the object of it, all right? So I'm gonna create an object name. So I will type, let's say student one. Student one is equal to student, okay? Now I just created a class of it, all right? I'm gonna do Trent type of student one. Okay, let me see. I like type. All right, so you just said class, right? And that basically mean we have a class, all right? All right. So this class don't have no property and value. It's just a very empty class, right? So that's how you create a object, right? So student one is an object, and the object contains everything inside a class, right? Any question, guys? Okay, so I'm gonna turn back the PowerPoint. All right, give me 1 second. All right. All right, so I just showed you how to create the let's see, it's not moving. All right. So I show you how to create the class in Python, an empty class, and then create the object. All right. Okay, but I didn't really show you like the main feature of it. All right. So the main feature of it is adding the attributes. All right. And there are two ways of adding the attribute. All right. So one way is adding a class attribute, which is basically fall inside of a class, but is not part of the init method. All right. And I will go over more about the init method. All right. So that's one way. So the class attribute is right over here. All right. So this is the class attribute, right? Okay. And then the next attribute, it is the instance attribute, all right? And that will be part of the init method, all right? And the init method is basically part of the class, all right? It's referred to self, all right? So it's like an initialization, all right? So if you want to pass in value, all right? So if you want to pass in value, let's say for my example, all right? I create a class called student, all right? And I have a property called name, all right? And I want to pass in multiple student name, all right? So I'm gonna create like 5 different student objects: student 1, student 2, student 3, student 4, and student 5, all right? So the first student will be my name, all right? Gerson, all right? And then student 2 will be maybe Jessica, student 3 will be Elizabeth, student 4 will be Joshua, and then student 5 will be Siraj, all right? Okay, if I want to pass in values, I would need to create a init function, all right? And in order to create it, you would have to add it as an instant attribute, all right? Which will be over here. Okay. All right. So the class attribute is basically you will hard code the value and it will be part of the class, all right? So I can put like say, let's say, is it part of career student? I can just put like a Boolean statement true, all right? But if I want to add some value, all right, I will have to add it with the init, all right? So the first one is the class attribute, all right? And the second one is the instance attribute, all right? All right, so how I will show you how it look like in Python, right? Okay, second. Okay. Okay. All right. So we have an object, all right? We have an empty object and we're ready to pass in some attribute. All right. So I'm gonna remove the keyword pass because I don't need it anymore. All right. So I'm getting the error on line 6, and that's because I haven't added anything to my class. Okay. So if I want to add, let's say, a class attribute, I'm gonna add class attribute. All right. I'm gonna create a variable. All right. I'm gonna create a variable is student. is student, and I'm gonna equal it. I'm gonna set it to true. All right. Okay. All right. So now the student one object contain the is student. All right. It can contain the property is student. All right. So if I want to print out the value, I'll put print student one dot is student. All right. Okay. Got a misspell. All right. I forgot to put the one. Okay. True. All right. I'm gonna add another class attribute. All right. So I'm gonna put, let's say, course. I'm gonna create a variable called course, and it's gonna contain a string data type. Course, and I put Python. Or I put Python OOP. All right. So we got a course called Python OOP, and I'm gonna create one more. All right. Let's see, what will be one more? Major. I'm gonna create a variable called major, and I put, let's say, computer science. All right. All right. So I'm gonna print out all the class attribute. All right. So I got the is student, which is true. I got a variable called course, and it has the value Python OOP. And I have a variable called major, which is computer science. Okay. Now, if I want to print out the value, I'm gonna type print student one dot course, and then I'm gonna type in print student one dot major. All right. All right. So now my student one object contain all the attribute. All right. So all these attributes, student one contain it, and I want to print out the value of it. All right. So I want to print out the value of is student. I want to print out the value of course, and I want to print out the value of major. Okay. So I'm gonna click on run. All right, and this is not an empty class anymore, so I'm gonna erase this part. All right. So now we have true and Python OOP, all right, and as well as computer science, all right. So that's how you create the class attribute, all right. All right. And not only that, not only I'm able to print out the class attribute, all other objects that I created under the student class will also contain these attributes, all right. So I can do, let's say, student two is equal to student. Student three is equal to student. Okay. Add student one. Okay, and then student two. And student three. Okay. I'm just gonna copy line 16 to 18. Two more time. All right. So I'm gonna put it here. And I put it here. All right. And then for student two, I'm just gonna change up the value. All right. Instead of having student one, I'm gonna have a student two. Student two. Student two. And this will contain student three. All right. Student three. Student three. And I'm gonna add one more print statement. Actually, three more print statements. So one for student one for student two, and one for student three. This is for student one. This is for student two. And this is for student three. All right, so if I run my code, all right, so we have student one. So this is for student one, which got printed in line 16. And contain true, Python, OOP, and computer science, which is all the class attribute. For student two, same thing, true, Python, OOP, computer science, and then in line 28, student three. All right. So this is true, Python, OOP, and computer science. Okay. All right. So the next one you're gonna be learning is what is called a instance attribute. All right. So to do that, you will need to use a method. All right. So in order to create a method in Python, you use the keyword diff. Okay. Diff followed by 2_ in it, another two underscore. All right. And then there's gonna be something new. All right. You will need to use the keyword self. All right. Keyword self. All right. And what that means is it referred to the instance of the class. All right. It referred to like the property of self. All right. Okay. So I want to pass in a value. All right. So I want to pass in my name. All right. So in order to do that, I will need to pass in a parameter. All right. So I'm going to add a variable called name. All right. All right. Now, so this variable name will contain the value of whatever I pass in here. All right. But in order to create that, in order to pass in a value, I'll need to save it into a variable. All right. So once you create an init, this is where it's gonna be a little more different. You will need to add the keyword self. All right. Self. Okay. So when you add the keyword self, and then you can create a variable name. All right. So it can be whatever value. Whatever variable name you want to call it. But I want to keep it to a good naming convention so that way it won't be that confusing. All right. So if I'm going to pass a value of a name, I'm going to create a variable called name. All right. All right. And I'm going to assign it to name. All right. Okay. And now because I add a parameter, all right, I need to pass in some argument. All right. I need to add some value to it. Okay. So I'm going to add my name to it. All right. So I'm going to type in Gerson. Okay. I'm going to type in, let's say, Jessica. And I'm gonna put, let's say, Sunkit. All right. All right. So it's just like random names, all right? And I'm gonna delete all of this. All right. Well, I'm gonna delete most of this, all right? So I'm just gonna delete the main one. And this is where object oriented starts shining, all right? So I'm gonna type in print student one dot name. All right. Oops, forgot the one. I'm gonna do this again. Student two. And then student three. Okay. Now if I run my code though, now we have different values, all right? So this is where the beauty lies on the object-oriented programming, all right? So let's say if you have, let's say, 50 students, all right? All right. And instead of having just one name, you have three more properties, all right? You have a name, you have a student ID, and maybe the year they're in, all right? So that's gonna be different type of values that you will need to create, all right? So if you want to create that, you will have to probably do like student one name, student ID, student, let's say student year, student 1 year, and then you will have to copy and paste like 50 times, all right? And that can be extremely tedious. Where with object, you do all it in one line, all right? You just have to create the blueprint for your class, and then you just pass in a value, all right? And it will make it very, very easy and simple for you to do some project with this, all right? So instead of repeating your code multiple times, you just have to just write your code base in a single unit once, all right? Okay, so let's take an example with the student ID, all right? All right, so I'm just gonna do only like 2, all right? So we have, let's say, I wanna manually pass in value, all right? Student 2 with ID, student 2, and let's say year, right? And then student 3, ID, and then student 3, year, all right? So this is just me adding, creating the value manually, all right? So I'll put, let's say, 190, and you're like on your 3rd year, 23, and you graduate 2023. Let's say 111, and you graduate maybe in 2024. Okay. All right. So if you have like 20 different students, this can be very tedious. If you have 20 different students and let's say you have 5 different properties, this can be very tedious. All right. Okay. But instead of doing this manually, you would just do it inside like the init function. All right. So I'm gonna just pass in ID, put ID, and I'll put, let's say, the year graduate. All right, so I'm going to delete this. So we're not going to need this anymore. All right. All right. So now that I pass in more values, I'm going to create the properties. All right. So self.id equal to ID, and then self.year is equal to year. Okay. And now because we have 2 new argument, I'm going to have to pass in more values. All right. So ID, I'm gonna put, let's say, 1990, and I'm gonna graduate this year. Let's pretend I'm gonna graduate this year. Actually, I'm gonna use that as integer, right? So you can add so you don't have to add string data type. You can add integer data type, float data type, and boolean. So it can be whatever data type, all right? So I'm gonna show you the integer data type, all right? So I graduated last year. All right, let's say Jessica, 876 or 875. Graduate maybe in 2023 this year, and then Sanke maybe graduate, got a student ID 765, and probably graduate 2025. All right. I'm gonna comment this out right here too. Instance attribute. Okay. All right. Okay. Now we got more values. All right. So now I'm gonna type in print student one dot ID and print student dot year. All right. Oops. And I'm just gonna copy this. Okay. I'm missing something. All right. I forgot to change it. 2, 2, and 3, 3. And I'm also going to just add the class attribute also. So I'm going to do student one print student one dot course. Okay. Student two dot course. And then student three dot course. All right. So now if I run my code, I have a question. Why would one? All right, so before I go on, All right. So if I run my object, all right. So we got basically all different type of value. All right. Gerson 1990, 2022. All right. And then it's still print the same class throughout. All right. So same class attribute, Python OOP, Python OOP, and Python OOP. All right. Okay. So look like we have a question. So hi Gerson, thanks for the webinar. All right. I wonder why would one we prefer a single class instead of two, a single function with multiple arguments that return the same parameters. Say is student, course, major, and name. All right. And then define student one, student two in the same manner as a class. All right. Student one is equal to student Gerson. What's the benefit over the function in this scenario, please? All right. So a function basically does a single action, all right? So what a function does is basically a collection of code that does a single action, all right? So the single action can basically do some manipulation, do some math calculation, maybe basically does an action, maybe print out something, does grab some data. A function does just basically one thing, all right? It does one single action, all right? And it's a collection of code that does one single action, all right? The difference between a class and a function, though, is that a class contains multiple different type of properties, values, and a function. All right. So you can have a function inside of your class. All right. And we will go over this one like right after this one. All right. So basically a function is basically a single action that get executed one time. All right. While a class basically describe whatever object that you're describing, all right? So it's basically you use a class to describe a certain object, all right? And you would use it in a way that you don't want to like repeat yourself multiple time, all right? So let's take a instance of a video game character, all right? So let's say we're playing some video game character and we have we try and create some enemies, all right? So we have like maybe like a soldier enemy, maybe an archer enemy. We have a sword enemy. All right. So they're all enemies. All right. But they have all generally the same type of properties. All right. They have a name. They're like enemy type. They have like some form of HP. They have all defense. All right. So you don't want to copy that code multiple times. All right. So you want to describe it. All right. And also each enemy will have an action. All right. And this is where a class come in, all right? So you can add a function inside of a class, all right? So you want the enemy to have different type of property, you want to have different type of value, you want to have different type of action, all right? So with a class, it does more stuff compared to a function, all right? A function is basically just get executed to do one certain thing. For a class, you have it described to do multiple things, all right? Did that answer your question, Eric? Okay. All right. So the next option we're gonna learn is called a method. All right. All right. So what is a method? All right. Method is basically a function that live in a class. All right. It's another word for a function inside of a class. Okay. So if I want to create a function inside of it, if I want to create all right. So I got another question. All right. Awesome. All right. All right. So let's see. Okay. Okay. All right. So if I want to create, let's say, a method. So a method is basically a function that live inside of a class, all right? So that's the only thing, all right? There's no real difference between a method and a function. They're both almost the same thing, just one just live inside of a class, all right? So if I want to create a method in Python, I would do the same process I would do with a function, all right? So I will add a comment, method, all right? And let me see, I'm going to think of a method. All right, if I want to create a method, you would use the keyword diff, okay? All right. And then you have to give any type of name for your function or method. All right, so I would do, let's say, went to class. Actually, take tests, all right? Take tests, all right? All right, and now we just have pass in the keyword self, so that way it can inherit all the properties in here, right? Okay. Okay. So let's say we have a method called take test, and I'm gonna print out like a random value, all right? Student, I'm gonna type in student is taking a test, all right? Okay. So now we have a student and he has some properties, all right? Got some class attribute, all right? You have is student, course, major, name that you have ID, you have year, and now it has an action, all right? The student can take an action, all right? And this action is it will take a test, all right? So I'm gonna delete most of this, all right? So that way it can be a little more easier to read. All right. So now if I want to call in that method, I'll just type in, so I don't have to add the print statement just because I already have a print statement inside my method, all right? So I can just type in student one dot take test. Okay. And I can do like the same thing, student two take test. Or student three dot take test. Okay. So if I run my code, so it's gonna print out this value, all right? Print student is taking tests, all right? Student one, this is student one, student is taking tests. This is student two, student is taking tests, and this is student three, student is taking test, all right? Okay, so that's pretty much, basically method and function is like the same thing, all right? So when you hear method, just think a function inside of a class, all right? That's the only thing, okay? Now, because this is inside of a class, and you have the keyword self, you have all the property inside the class. You have the instant attribute. Okay. So I'm gonna pass in some value. I'm gonna I'm gonna remove this. All right. I said student. I'm gonna add the property self dot name plus let's take it in test. All right. All right. So what I just did right now, all right, I used the keyword self, and because I'm using the keyword self, I have all the attribute, all right, that's inside of class, all right. So now if I run my code, instead of saying student, it's gonna say the actual name, all right. So now if I run my code, now you got Gerson is taking a test, all right. Student, this is for student one, all right. Gerson is taking the test. Jessica is taking the test, and Sanket is taking the test, all right. All right. Well, what if we want to pass in some value, all right? Let's say we want to pass in the subject, all right? So I'm going to pass in some value, all right? Let me see. I'm going to put embedded system. Embedded system. Maybe let me put for embedded or for ethical hacking. And then maybe for data science. For data science. Let me add a space right here. Right. And because I'm passing a value, it means I have to add some parameters, all right? So I'll put course. All right. So now I'm just gonna add plus course. Actually, let me put. I'm gonna put Okay, I need to change one thing. I'm gonna comment this out. That way it won't interfere. All right. Now I'm gonna pass course. Okay. All right. So now we have, this is for student 1. Gerson is taking a test for embedded system, all right? Jessica is taking a test for ethical hacking, and Sanket is taking a test for data science, all right? So I'm able to create a method, and I'm able to grab in values, all right? So I'm able to grab values from the class attribute, all right? I mean, not the class attribute. I'm able to grab values from the instant attribute, and as well as passing value to the function, all right? Okay. But let's say I want to return the value, all right? Let me see. So I'm gonna do, let's say, so I'm gonna pass in a letter grade. Okay, so I'm gonna do return. So I'm gonna comment this out. I'm gonna return a value, all right? So you can return a value. All right, so I'm gonna do return. Let's see, self dot name. Actually, I'm just gonna copy this. Okay, so instead of printing it, I wanna return it. Okay. So I'm gonna do, let's say, I'm gonna create a variable called student action, student 1 action, right? Student 2 action, all right? Student 3 action, okay? And I'm gonna print it out. Print student 1 action, print let me copy this. I'm gonna do student 2, and then student 3. Run my code. All right. So so I'm able to print out the value, or I can return the value. So if I add a return statement, I can return a value. So it doesn't have to be what I just put. It can put like whatever value. So I can like delete this and put studying to be a programmer. All right. So if I run my code, so so everything is just gonna have all the variables student 1 actually contain this value. All right. Any questions? All right, so I'm assuming no questions. Okay, so we have seen of how to create a class attribute, as well as creating an instance, as well as creating a method. All right, but let's say I just want to change a value. All right, I just want a change like a certain value. All right, so I just want to change like maybe I want to change like my year, right? So it doesn't look like I might graduate this year. I might graduate, I'm gonna take a break for 2 years and come back in maybe 2025. And probably graduate in 2028. All right. So I'm gonna delete out this. All right. Actually, I'm gonna delete most of this. Okay. Okay, look like we have a question. So the training should be recorded, all right? Okay. All right. Okay, so all right. So we have let's say all right. So we passed in some value. All right, so Gerson, Jenkins. All right. And I just want to change like the year that I graduated. Instead of posting like 2022, I want to come back and I want to do like let's say my PhD degree. All right. So what year am I gonna graduate? Maybe like 2028. Right. So if I do print, so print, see student 1. student one dot name. Let me put it in student one. Right. So if I run my code, I'm gonna get Gerson, right? And I'm gonna comment this out for now. So I'm not gonna need this part. Right. So if I run my code, I get Gerson. All right. But I mean not Gerson. That's the wrong one. I meant year. All right. Year. All right. 2022. All right. But I'm going back to do my PhD. All right. And it looked like it's gonna take me 3 years to do my PhD. All right. So that'd be like maybe 2025. All right. So I want to change that value. All right. So if I want to change that value, I would type in student one. All right. Student one dot year. All right. Is equal to say 2025. Now if I print student dot one year, now is at 2025. All right. Okay, so that's pretty much how you would do it. All right. You can also create a method to change the value. All right. So I'm gonna create a method called increment. I'm gonna create a I'm gonna increment by year. All right. So I'm gonna create a method. So and the method basically is an action. All right. So I'm giving an action to my student class. All right. So I'm gonna do inc year. All right. I want to increment my year, and I'm gonna assign it to self. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do self dot year is plus equal to 1. All right. All right. So right now it's 2022. So I'm gonna rerun my code. All right. So we had 2022, and I'm gonna type, and that's so we had 2022. So I printed out in line 31, 2022. I changed the value to 2025. And now when I print it, it goes to 2025, all right? But then I just create a method called inc year, all right? And what this does, it will increase the year of when I graduate, all right? So I'm trying to do a PhD. Maybe I want to do like a dual major. So I want to do like study 2 PhD program, right? So it's gonna take a little longer for me, all right? Okay, so I can type in student one dot inc year, right? So now if I print my value again, student one dot year, it's able to increase the value too. So I can assign it manually by counting student dot one dot year equal 2025, or I can create a method that does it for me. All right. So you will see this a lot more. And when you're creating your classes, you will see more of this right here. Instead of manually changing the value, you will see it inside of a method where it does it inside of a method. So instead of manually typing it, you would just do it in 34, right? So especially if you like do like a lot of games development, it will be a much more better practice. I personally do it this way, and you will see like a lot of industry using this way. All right, it will create a method, like let's say set something, and use that way to change the value. All right, okay. So I'm gonna copy this like 2 more times. Two, okay. And then I get like 27, 28, all right? Or I can maybe change my ID, all right? If I want to change my ID, I get to def set ID. I'm gonna type self new ID, and then I'm gonna create self that ID is equal to new ID, right? So I'm gonna remove all this. Now I'm gonna set new ID. Okay. All right. I'm gonna set a new ID. All right. So let me see. All right. I'm gonna type student one dot set ID. And now because I have a an argument right here, I need to pass in value. All right. So I have 190, but that's my old ID. All right. I'm gonna get a new ID. All right. I'm gonna do, let's say 360. All right. Now if I print student student ID, and I'm gonna add one at the beginning too. So I'm gonna add one at the beginning. I'm gonna print out the beginning. So I'm gonna print out the original ID, change the ID, and then print out the new ID. All right. So if I run my code, all right. So this is for student one. All right. So originally it was 1990, and I passed it over here in line 27. And then in line 41, I set a new ID. All right. And set ID basically mean I'm gonna add on the value called new ID, and I set it to the new ID. All right. All right. So any question? Okay. Let me see. So, all right, sharing and then reshare. All right, so I'm gonna reshare my screen. I'm query slide. All right, so I just showed you how you create some attribute for your class. All right, so we created some class attribute. We created an instant attribute. We created some methods. We learned how to change the value of it. All right. Okay. So next on the list is going to be inheritance. All right. So this is a little confusing for some students. All right. And they just get a little confused by this. All right. And to put it in simple terms, all right, it's basically a class within another class. All right. So you grab one class, all the properties, and you use it as your own. All right. So inherited allow us to grab all the properties and method from class and put it into another. All right. So what did I even mean? All right. So let's pretend we're only creating one class. All right. All right. So the class will be animal. All right. And we got some properties. So it'll be type animal. We got the weight and we got name. All right. But let's say if we want to be even more specific, instead of having animal because it's kind of general, we want to go a little more specific. All right. So let's say we could create lizards. All right. We want to create reptiles. All right. So we got lizard. All right. If you wanna grab all the properties from this class and have it inside lizard, you have to pass in the name of the class. All right. And then from there, you will need to add all the attribute as well as all the attribute that you want for the lizard, all right? And then you will need to also initialize the animal class inside of your lizard class. So you're doing two initialization, all right? So you're initializing the lizard and you're initializing the animal, okay? And now when you print it, all right, so if you want to call it, you'll call the lizard, and then you will type in, let's say, reptile, the weight, the name of it, and like an action. All right. So I put like ability. Right. So all this, so lizard class, when you pass in the value, so you pass in reptile 5 pound lizard, it will get stored here. It get passed into here. All right. But lizard only have one property. All right. So if we look at here, and that property is self-diability. All right. All right, so what's happening with the other four properties, all right? So the other four property are from the original class, all right? And that original class is the animal class, all right? So when you pass in those four property, you will pass in type animals, all right? Okay. Okay, so all right. So any question here? Okay, so I'm gonna do this, but I'm gonna create a different class. All right. All right. So give me 1 second. All right. So instead of using a student class, I'm gonna create a different class. All right. So this can be a lot more easier if I use it specifically on game characters. All right. So game characters. So I know. So let's go. I'm gonna create a class called enemy. All right. And it's gonna be mostly for like gaming. All right. So it can be a little more easier to describe it. All right. So enemy. All right. We got enemy class. All right. Underscore init. So I'm gonna initialize it. I'm gonna type in self. All right. So the enemy has a name. Maybe let's see, I'm trying to think. So it has a name. Maybe we can do like damage. And like say damage and maybe HP. All right. So we have 3 different properties. Right. Self dot name is equal to name. Self dot damage is equal to damage. And self dot HP. Okay. All right. And I'm gonna add some comments. Class call enemy. And I'm gonna do enemy 1. Enemy 1. All right. So enemy 1 is equal to enemy. And I'm gonna do, let's say, some zombie. All right. Or actually just some maybe like a dog enemy. All right. We got a dog enemy, does like 5 damage, and has like 10 HP. All right. You got 10 health. All right. So if I wanna create an inherited class, all right, I will just have to type in another class name. All right. I'll do class, right? And I'm gonna create dog. All right. All right. So I'm gonna change the name the dog to like some random name. All right. Um, scary creature. Scary creature. Scary creature. All right. And I'm gonna change it from class to dog to hound instead. All right. So it's just a better naming convention. All right. So I just changed it just for a better naming convention. All right. Okay. So in order to create an inherited class, all right, I will have to type in the original class, all right? So I will type enemy, all right? Now I will need to do def, oops, yeah, def underscore init underscore, and it will contain the same one, self, name, damage, HP, and let's say ability, all right? Ability. All right. And because I'm only want to have the ability for my hound, I'm gonna do ability is equal to ability. All right. And now I need to pass in those values into my enemy class. All right. So I will have to create enemy dot underscore init underscore, let's say name, damage, and HP. All right, so I need to add one more value. All right, and I put like bite. All right, it bites. So we got like an enemy character that bites. All right, so I'm gonna print enemy1 dot name, print enemy2. Okay, not 2 dot damage, print enemy1 dot HP, print enemy1 ability. I'm gonna run my code. If I ever get 1, 2. Oh, okay, my bad. And change this to hound. All right. So enemy HP. We got damage HP. Missing one argument. Let's see, self. Okay, I just forgot the self word. All right. Okay, so I probably did a lot of things. I may have lost you guys. All right, so don't worry. I'm gonna break it down step by step. All right. We'll call it inheritance. All right. Okay, so all right. So let me annotate this. All right. Okay. So we create a class called enemy. Let's go with the first one. All right, let's go over here. All right, we create a class called enemy. Okay. And enemies will contain properties. All right. So it contains your typical properties. All right. So it can be whatever property that you want. It can be name, it can be damage, it can be HP. All right. All right. And then when we call it, so let me actually, I'm gonna let me call it as well. All right. So I'm gonna create, I'm gonna call it somewhere else. I'm gonna create enemy original. All right. Call enemy. And I'm just gonna copy this value as well. All right. Let me print this out. Okay. Okay. So let me just run my code. All right, so let's go. Let's see. Ooh, I missed somewhere. I just messed up somewhere. Oh, my bad. All right, let me remove byte. Okay. All right, so let's go with the first class. All right. So let me annotate. All right. So the first class contains some property, self.name, self.damage, and self.hp. All right. Okay, but let's say I want to create another class. All right. And that class is going to contain the same thing as the original class, but I just don't want to retype everything. All right. So let's pretend we have multiple methods. All right. So I'm going to add some random methods. So I'm not going into detail with what it's going to contain. So let's say action. Let's say put like attack. Oops. Attack. Okay. Okay. Attack. Right. I just put like attack, and I'm just going to push pass. All right. All right. So let's say we have like three different so we have three different, let's say we have three different properties, all right? I mean, not three different, we had three different methods, all right? So we have some properties, let's say name, damage, HP. We have some attack, let's say maybe it has some movement, all right? All right, that's what the enemy class has, all right? But let's say we want to take it a step further, all right? And we want to create another class, all right? It's gonna be like an enemy class, but it's gonna be more specific, all right? So it's gonna be, let's say, a hound, all right? So instead of recreating it multiple times, all right, you can actually inherit that class, all right? So when you inherit that class, all right, so let's create a class called a hound, all right? Hound, when you pass in the class name enemy, hound will contain everything in here, all right? So it's basically a class within a class, right? It will contain all the methods and property, but now you can actually add some new properties and values, new properties and method, all right? That's only only specifically to that inherent class, all right? So basically, if you wanna duplicate something, but want to add something else with it, that's where the inheritors come in. All right. So I have a hound class that contain all the properties of enemy. All right. Okay. So let's see. Let me see. Okay. Okay. So let's say I'm gonna create another class. I'm gonna create another class as well. All right. So we got a hound. I'm gonna do, let's say, maybe skeleton. All right. Add type enemy. And it's gonna be the same thing. And then and maybe, so we got inheritance. All right. And then maybe, oops, forgot to comment. All right. So we got a hound, and we got a skeleton, and maybe a blob. All right. We got called blob. Right. And it's going to contain the same thing. All right. Okay. So I'm going to, all right. Let me add some line. All right. So the class hound, the class skeleton, and the class blob all contain the same properties that's inside the class enemy. All right. So I didn't have to rewrite it for another class. All right. I just basically just pass in the name of the class, and it will take whatever property in it. All right. And then I can add my own specific property. All right. So hound will have like maybe self ability. Maybe for skeleton, it will do like maybe self location. I want to have my skeleton class be a specific location. Right. So this is just an example. All right. I'm gonna change this for here. And let me see. And then blob, I'll put like, let's say, I just put like weight. All right. I'm just gonna give it a random value. Weight. Weight. All right. Weight is equal to weight. Okay. And I'm gonna remove the drawing. Here. Okay. So if I want to call it, all right. So I'm just gonna remove all this. So I'll do like enemy one, enemy two, enemy three. All right. This one is equal to, let's say, skeleton. And I'll put, let's say, skeleton. Creepy. I'm gonna do creepy. So creepy creature. Creepy creature. And it has like, say, 100 damage, 25 health. And I put location, right? Yeah, location. And its location is out in the desert, all right? All right. Skeleton and then blob. I'm gonna put blob. Funny creature. Damage, it does 1 damage. HP, maybe like 1,000. And its weight, I'll do like maybe 2. I'm gonna put a string value instead of integer. like 200 pound. 200 pound. Right? Okay. All right. So, and I'm gonna add. Actually, yeah, I'm gonna add a method as well. So I'm gonna add a method onto the enemy class, all right? So to make it a little more easier, all right? I'm gonna call this method description, all right? And I'm assigning to self. And I'm gonna do print. I am a self dot name with and I'll put let's say self dot HP. And because it's an integer, I'm gonna convert it to a string, right? Oops. With health, right? Let me see. I'm gonna add a space. Okay. So I'm gonna do enemy one dot description, enemy two dot description, and enemy three dot description. Okay. All right. So enemy one is equal to hound. So right here. So this is like a different class. Enemy two is equal to skeleton, and enemy three is equal to blob. But they all have the same method. All right. And the reason why they all have the same method is because they all share the same class, which is enemy. All right. And enemy have the method called description. All right. And description contain like I am self.name with self.hp health. All right. So they all have this, right? And if I run my code, okay. It looks like I got an error. Missing one required position argument. Wait, all right. So looks like I'm missing one argument. Okay, one, two, one, two. Okay, I added extra. I have an extra value. All right. Okay, now it should run. Okay. Okay. So I am a scary creature with 10 HP health. 10 health. I'm a creepy creature with 25 health, and I'm a funny creature with 1,000 health. All right. So even though they're all different classes, hound, skeleton, blob, they all share the same original class. All right, and that original class is enemy. All right, so I created a hound that has the same properties as enemy. I created a skeleton with the same properties as enemy, and I create a blob. All right, and contain like the same property values and not the same value, same properties and methods as enemy. All right. All right, so that is basically like the basically what an inherited does. All right, it inherit the class, right? It inherit all the properties and methods, right? So this is very useful if you're trying to create another class that has the same properties and methods, but you don't want to redo all of it multiple times, all right? So instead of redoing it, you just have to call in the original. You create the original the original class, and then you pass it into the inherited class, all right? Okay. But also, even though we create a class, all right? The inherit class don't have the same properties or value, all right? So let's say right here, self dot ability, only hound will have that self dot ability, right? Because it's only part of the hound class, all right? Self dot location only is part of the skeleton, and self dot weight is only part of the blob, all right? So it's not being shared, all right? So if I try, let's say, try to print out, let's say print, let's say enemy two. So enemy two is skeleton, all right? and I want skeleton to print that self-ability. If I try to do that, I'm gonna get a error here, right? All right, print enemy 2. Okay, so it does not exist. All right, it's non-existent, and that's because ability is only part of the hound class. All right, but I can print out its own attribute. All right, location. Okay. All right. So did that make sense, guys? Okay. So it looked like I got an error. Location. Location. Okay. Enemy 2. Let's see. Location. Location. String object is not callable. Okay. Look like I have an error somewhere. String object not. Okay. My bad. Okay. I just put it as a method. All right. So it should be not a method. All right. It should be just the property, that location. All right. So any question? Okay. All right. Let me see. Okay. Okay. All right. So the next concept. All right. So we have created class and objects, and we learn how to create attribute, and we learn about inheritance. All right. But the next main concept is polymorphism. All right. And what that means is to have many different type of form. All right. So it can be used to determine, let's say, an example, if an animal can swim or not. Swim or not. Well, okay. So it looked like I just froze. Give me 1 second. Okay. So, all right. All right. So polymorphism. All right. So what that even mean is basically it means to have many different forms. All right. So an example would be basically if you have an animal that can swim or not. All right. So you can have, let's say we have an original class, let's say animal, and then we inherit that animal with 5 different other class. All right. So that class can be, let's say, a bird class, a fish class, a dog class, maybe a reptile class, and maybe like an insect class. All right. And they all have a specific method. All right. Which is like dot swim. All right. So basically what polymorphism means is that that same function can be used many times, that same name, but it will produce different value for each of those class. All right. So let me see. Okay. So an example will be right here. Right. See, let me annotate, draw. All right. All right. So we have a class called swim. I mean, a class called animal. All right. And it has the function swim. All right. Swim. And swim said many animal can swim, but many can't. All right. Right here. Okay. And then you have a lizard class that inherit the animal class. All right. So it has both the keyword swim. All right. All right. So when you call this one, all right, even though animal already have the keyword swim, it won't print this. All right. I mean, it won't print this one. All right. It will print this. All right. So when you call the lizard class and call it in print, it will say lizard cannot swim. Right. All right. Now you have chart, which inherit the animal class. All right. So contain intro and swim. All right. But we also have swim inside of our own class, right? Right here. So we had two swim. We have swim right here, and we have swim right here. All right. All right. So we create multiple objects: animal 1, animal 2, and animal 3. So animal 1 is equal to animal, right? Okay. Animal 2 is equal to lizard, and animal 3 is equal to shark. Okay. So if I type, let's say animal.1.intro and animal1.swim, and then animal2.intro and animal.2swim, these are the value that it will print out, all right? So these are the value. All right, so we will get one that says there are many different type of animals, but the first one, it will be the animal method, all right? So it'll be the animal class. And this one get print right here. Many animal can swim and many can't. And that print is right here, all right? All right. And then when we have animal 2 that swim, which is a shark that inherit the animal class, it will print out the intro right here, but it will print out the lizard cannot swim, okay? Right. Okay. So that what basically polymorphism mean, all right? So I know that this topic's a little kind of confusing, but let's look at the name, all right? Each of them has swim, all right? Swim is inside its own class for animal, but lizard inherit animal, so it has swim, but it also has its own swim method, all right? Same thing with a shark. It inherits the animal class, it contains the swim method, but it also has its own swim method, all right? Swim, and it has its own swim, all right? So you have many type of same method called swim, but it provide different type of value, all right? Even though it's the same swim, but it's just basically a different type of value, right? And that's what polymorphism is, all right? All right, so let's try to execute it. Okay, let's see. All right, so are you guys able to see my screen? All right. Okay, so I'm gonna remove some things, all right? So I'm gonna delete the init, all right? I'm gonna delete all the init, all right? Init and properties of value, all right? So I'm gonna add polymorphism onto my enemy class, all right? Okay, and I'm gonna create some methods, all right? So I'm gonna do, let's say, intro. Oops. Intro. I'm going to put this is a enemy class. And I'm gonna create another method, all right? I'm called description. And I'm put like this has the enemy class. This has the enemy class methods. A description, I'll put, let's say description, actually, whoops, print. This is the original class, all right? This is the original class. I'm gonna create right here. So I'm gonna do the same thing. Create description. Oops. And I'm gonna add a different value, all right? This is part of the hound class, okay? I'm gonna do the same thing. Description. This is part of the enemy class. And I'm gonna add a description right here. Diff. This is part of the blob class, right? Okay. And I'm gonna remove all the properties and value right here. All right, so this is the original class. I'm gonna put like the original class. I'm gonna change it to original class, and everything else is an inheritance. All right. Okay. Let me change this. So I'm gonna delete all the values. And now I'm going to print out all the methods, all right? So enemy original. I'm going to type intro. Enemy original description. Enemy one dot intro. Enemy one dot description. Enemy two dot original. She. Okay. All right. Okay, so I created some class. So the original class is enemy, and it will contain a method, all right? It contains two methods, okay? So the first method is the intro, which will print out, this has the enemy class method. And the second one is description, all right? And the enemy class description will contain, this is the original class, all right? Then for class hound, skeleton, and blob, we inherit all the methods inside the enemy class, all right? It will contain intro and description, all right? But all the hounds, all the other class, the hound, the skeleton, and the blob, will also contain their own description method, all right? So they all have the exact same method, all right? Description. So but inside the description method will contain different type of value when you print it out, all right? So on line 29 to 32, I'm gonna create the object, right? So enemy original contain enemy object, enemy one contain the hound object, enemy two contain skeleton object, and the enemy three contain the blob object, all right? From there, I'm gonna do I'm gonna print out the function, intro, and description, right? So the blob, skeleton, and hound all contain the intro, method. Just because we add the enemy class, which inherit everything inside the original class, all right? So when we add the enemy class in hound, skeleton, and blob, it inherit all the methods, all right? So it inherits the intro and it inherit the description. But we also add our own description as well. So let's see what was gonna happen, all right? So if I run my code, Okay, take 0 position argument, but 1 was given. Let me see. Line 34. Okay, enemy original. Okay, maybe I need to add stuff. Keyword self. Okay, you just forgot the keyword self, all right? Okay. So now if you look at it, all right, so we have this has the enemy class method, all right, and that was produced in line 34, all right, which is the enemy class, right? And then when you type in description, it contains this is the original class, all right? And then you do the same thing for enemy one, which contains the hound class. This has the enemy class method, but once you add dot description, it's not going to produce this is the original class. It's going to produce this is part of the hound class, all right? Same thing for enemy 2, enemy 3, and enemy 3. So enemy 2 contained the skeleton class, and enemy 3 contained the blob class, all right? And with the skeleton class, it will say this is part of the enemy class, all right? So right over here, okay? All right, so this is part of the enemy class, and that will fall over here, okay? And this is the Bob class, and it's fall over here, all right? But they all inherit the description class as well. So they all inherit the description class, but it produces different value, all right? So that's basically what polymorphism is, all right? Basically, it's different form. I mean, it basically take different forms, all right? But it does like the same thing, all right? So they all have the method description, but it take different form of the description, all right? Description for enemy contain original class. The description for hound contain the hound class. The enemy, the skeleton description will say the enemy class, and the description for inheritance will say the blob class, right? So that's polymorphism, right? Okay. Let's see. All right, so let me reload this. So we got the final one, all right? The final concept for OOP. Okay. Okay, let me see. Stop sharing. Let's see, review, view. Okay, it's not showing presentation. Encapsulation, all right? Encapsulation, all right? And what does this mean is we want to bundle all of our data and method that work within one unit, all right? So encapsulation basically put restriction on accessing the variable method directly, but instead use method to change the data within the class, all right? And in order to do the encapsulation, we just need to create a property, all right? Let me see, where is the annotation? All right, so you need to create a property, but how do you create a property is a little more different, all right? You would need to add a underscore, 2 double underscore before the property, all right? And what this means is basically the property is private, right? So we have a bank system called we have a class called bank and contain a property called price, which is 100, all right? So when we try to change the value to 2,500 and print it, so we use display, all right? This is the result, all right? Okay, so we had the property called price, and it contained the value of 100. And we have a couple methods. All right, we have two methods. So we have one method called display, and it will display the price, and a second method called set price. We're just gonna set the price. All right. So we call the object here. We display the result, and it display price 100. Right. But when we try to change it manually and display afterward, it is still 100. Right. I know earlier I showed you how to change the value, but now when you try to change the value, it doesn't work. All right. And the reason now for it is because it's private. All right. And the only way to change it is to change it to the inside the class method. All right. So you have to create a method called set price, and it will change the value. Okay. All right. So let's try to add it. So it's gonna be very quick, and then we're gonna wrap it up. All right. So we are on our final part of OOP. Okay. Okay. 1 second. Okay. So I'm gonna remove everything. Right. So I'm gonna go all the way back to the student class. All right. So I'm going to undo everything. Oh, okay. I can't go back. Okay. This is okay. Never mind. Okay. So I'm just gonna delete everything. All right. I'm just gonna delete everything. All right. I'm just gonna create a class called bank. All right. Bank system. I'm gonna create method called init. And I'm gonna pass in self and price. Okay. See, I'm not gonna put price. I'm gonna change it to amount. All right. How much money do I have in the bank account? I'm gonna create a property self.amount. And this is where you wanna encapsulate. All right. If you want to set it to private, you have to add underscore underscore amount. All right. You need to add double underscore, and I'm typing amount. All right. And I'm gonna create two more methods. All right. I'm gonna create display self. And what this does, it will display the bank system. See, you have str self dot underscore underscore amount. In your bank account. Right. And then I'm gonna create set amount. All right. Value. And I'm gonna do, let's say, self dot amount is equal to value. Right. There's gonna be an error somewhere. Oh, what that plus. All right, so I'm gonna create an object. So I'm gonna put like checking is equal to bank system, and then put like say $1,000. All right, we can put $1,000. All right, and I want to do checking dot display. All right, and then I'm gonna change the value. I wanna hard code the value instead. All right. Amounts. I forgot to, yeah. Amount is equal to 100. I'll do checking dot display. And then I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna set amount. All right. I'm gonna do set amount to maybe 2,500. And I'll do checking dot display. Right. All right. So if I run my code. Okay. So a quick overview. All right. I create a class. It has a property amount. I have a display method that display the amount, and I have a set amount, which will set the value. All right. So I pass in 1,000, so it will contain 1,000. And when I display, it will print out you have 1,000 in your bank account. All right. But now when I try to change it to 100, it doesn't change. All right. And the reason for it is because the double underscore. All right. And it made it private. So now I don't have access of manually changing it. All right. And this is basically to protect myself. All right. I want to protect my program, so that way nobody can change the value. All right. So when I display, it still have the original amount. All right. 1,000. All right. Not 100. All right. But if I want to change it, I have to use a method. All right. With the method, I can change the value. So I create a method called set amount, and it changed the value. All right. So I put set amount to 2,500. All right. And now when I put checking the display, now I have the new value. All right. So that's basically what encapsulation is. All right. So basically you're just protecting the data. All right. You want to set it to private. All right. So you don't want the public to change the data. All right. So if you're in a banking system, you don't want someone to just like write, I want to change the bank account to 2 million. All right. That's gonna be a big problem for the banking system. So you want to keep that data pretty much private. All right. And to make it private, you would need to add double underscore. All right. And that will cause Python to change it. All right. But if I change the double underscore to no underscore, all right, and let's see what happened. All right. So look at the second value, 1,000. All right. So if I run my code, actually, give me 1 second. I'm gonna add this, right? All right. Instead of showing 1,000, now it shows 100. All right. Now the data is public. All right. So that is basically encapsulation. All right. And give me 1 second. All right. So that's basically encapsulation. And we are done. All right. Let's get hacking. All right. So basically, Python OOP is basically object-oriented programming, and it's a paragon where you use data to do some manipulation. All right. So you use data to describe a real-world object. All right. So what consists of OOP is basically class, attribute, inheritance, polymorphism, and encapsulation. All right. And we're gonna wrap it up for this webinar. All right. Okay, so now I'm gonna pass it to Sankit.
Thank you, Gerson. Thank you for this webinar, and thank you all of you for attending the session also. Guys, if you have any questions, anything that you want to ask, feel free to go ahead and type it in the chat box, or we are going to go ahead and wrap up this session. I'll give you a few secs. Just check if you have any question. Feel free to type it in. Meanwhile, thank you, Gerson, for this amazing session. And I'm pretty sure our learners learned something new today. All right, any more question, guys? All right, I don't see any more questions coming up, Gerson. So I guess we are going to go ahead and call it today. Thank you, everybody, once again for attending this session. Any last words, Gerson, for the audience?
No last words.
All right, perfect. Thank you. You have a nice day. Bye-bye and take care.
All right, take care, everybody. Bye-bye.